It was August 1976, outside the Mid-South Coliseum. The crowd was gone. Rain tapped the pavement. One young woman stood alone, clutching a handmade sign. She didn't have a ticket. Elvis was already inside, until headlights cut through the darkness. Before we get to what happened next, make sure you stick around. This isn't just about a meeting with the king, it's about the moment a small act of kindness changes a life. The rain had thinned the crowd hours ago, but she was still there. It was August 1976, Memphis. The Mid-South Coliseum loomed like a sleeping giant against the night sky, its metal ribs slick with rain. The show hadn't even started yet, but the street outside was quiet, now only the hiss of tires on wet asphalt and the distant hum of the city. She stood near the curb, denim jacket clinging to her shoulders, hair plastered against her cheeks. Her hands clutched a warped piece of cardboard. The letters, thick, uneven, were written in black marker. "Just wanted to see you, Elvis." Security staff moved in the shadows, shutting doors, snapping locks, carrying the last of the gear. Inside, they glanced at her, but said nothing. She wasn't causing trouble, just waiting. According to witnesses, she'd been there for hours. She shifted from foot to fight the chill. The smell of rain on hot concrete mixed with a faint whiff of cigarette smoke drifting from the loading dock. Somewhere deep inside, a bass guitar thumped a sound check. Maybe, but it was muffled, almost like a heartbeat she couldn't quite catch. Then it happened. A low rumble rolled up the street. Two black Cadillacs rounded the corner, headlights cutting through the mist. The lead car's wipers flashed back and forth, scattering droplets into the air. As it passed under the streetlight, she saw him, front passenger seat, white scarf loose around his neck, the hair, the profile, Elvis Presley. Her breath caught in her throat. She froze, not the kind of stillness you choose, but the kind that takes hold when your mind can't decide whether to move closer or step back. Inside the Cadillac, Elvis's gaze shifted, a slow turn of the head. His eyes met hers. Something changed in his expression. Curiosity. Recognition? No, something else. The car began to slow. She felt her pulse quicken, the air suddenly heavier. One of the security men in the front seat leaned forward, saying something she couldn't hear. Elvis kept his eyes on her. The Cadillac rolled to a stop just a few feet away. The rain pattered harder now, dripping from the car's chrome trim. The passenger door handle moved. A tall man in a dark jacket security stepped out, his shoes splashing into the gutter. He looked at her sign, then at her. The door swung open. Inside, Elvis tilted his head slightly, as if inviting her closer. She took one slow step toward him. Cliffhanger, and then the tinted window began to glide down. The hum of the motor stopped. The only sound left was rain on glass. The tinted window began to sink, slow and smooth, letting the night air rush in. A warm glow spilled from inside the Cadillac, mixing with the cold drizzle. Elvis leaned slightly toward the opening. The rain pattered against the door, tiny beads running down the chrome before dripping to the curb. His eyes dark, steady, found hers. "You've been waiting long, honey." The voice wasn't loud, but it carried, deep, gentle, like he'd asked 100 fans 100 questions, but this one was for her. She nodded, couldn't get a word out. Her fingers tightened on the soggy cardboard sign until the edges bent inward. Water streaked the black marker letters. Behind Elvis, a bodyguard in the back seat shifted, scanning the sidewalk with the kind of practiced calm that still made you feel watched. The driver kept one hand on the wheel, eyes on the rear view. Elvis glanced toward them, then back at her. For a moment, it was as if he was weighing something in silence. The sound of distant cheers drifted faintly from the main entrance, echoing. Under the overhang, he broke the pause with 3 quiet words. "Hop in for a minute." The breath caught in her chest. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right. Then the security man by the door stepped aside, gesturing gently. Her sneakers made a soft slap against the wet pavement as she moved forward. The rain felt colder now, sharper against her skin. The interior of the Cadillac smelled faintly of leather and something richer cologne, maybe. Warm air pushed from the vents, fogging the faint edges of the glass. She slid onto the seat beside him, not too close. Her sign rested awkwardly on her lap, damp against her jeans. The door shut with a heavy click, and the outside world muffled instantly. It was quieter now. The cheers outside were a dull hum. The only sounds in the car were the faint tick of the cooling engine and the gentle squeak of the wipers on the windshield. Elvis turned slightly toward her. "What's your name?" she told him, her voice smaller than she expected. "Where you from?" The way he asked it like he actually wanted to know made her throat tighten. She told him her town. "A few hours away." He smiled. "That's a long way to come, stand in the rain." She managed a nervous laugh, shaking her head. "Couldn't get a ticket. Just wanted to see you." The smile lingered on his face, but his eyes carried something softer now. He leaned back in his seat, studying her for a second, as if memorizing the moment. Then, without turning away, he tapped twice on the driver's shoulder. The Cadillac eased forward, pulling away from the curb. Streetlights slid across the glass, flashing over his white scarf and the faint sheen of rain still in his hair. She didn't know where they were going. Cliffhanger, but she knew she was about to find out. The Cadillac didn't turn toward the main entrance. It slipped into the dark, away from the noise. The rain softened as they left the streetlights behind, tires hissing over slick pavement. The girl sat stiffly in the seat, still clutching her sign, not daring to lean back. Elvis rested his elbow on the armrest, eyes on the road ahead, but every so often he'd glance at her, almost like he was checking she was real. "You ever been here before?" he asked, his tone easy. She shook her head. "First time in Memphis." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. The car turned down a narrow lane beside the venue, where the brick walls were close and glistening with rain. The sound of the crowd was gone now, replaced by the low rumble of the idling engine and the occasional static burst from a security radio up front. "What brought you?" She hesitated. The truth felt small. "Just wanted to see you once, even if it was from far away." Elvis's mouth lifted in a faint half-smile. "That's a lot of rain for far away." The driver eased to a stop in a dim side lot, light spilling from a single overhead fixture. Elvis shifted in his seat, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled something out. "Hold this." He placed the scarf into her hands, white, soft, still warm from his neck. She froze, staring at it. The scent of cologne clung faintly to the fabric. "Go on," he said, gesturing toward her grip. She pressed it to her cheek without thinking. He chuckled softly, leaning back. "Looks better on you than me." From somewhere inside the building, a muffled burst of guitar floated into the night. Elvis glanced toward the sound, then back at her. "You hear that? Band's warming up." Her heart thudded once, hard. He tapped the driver's shoulder again. "Let's show her the stage." The Cadillac rolled forward toward a metal door where two security men stood waiting. One swung it open, revealing a narrow hallway glowing. Under harsh fluorescent light, the smell of coffee, dust, and faint cigarette smoke rushed in. They stepped out. Elvis walked a half step ahead, but his pace was unhurried. She followed, the scarf still draped in her hands. The floor was concrete, the air cooler than outside. They passed open doorways where musicians tuned guitars, the twang of strings sharp and quick. Somewhere, someone laughed. A stagehand rolled a black equipment case by, giving her a curious glance before disappearing into the shadows. "You ever been backstage?" Elvis asked over his shoulder. She shook her head, her voice caught in her throat. "You're about to." They turned a corner, and there it was, the black curtain, drawn heavy and tall, the edges trembling with the vibrations of the crowd on the other side. Through it, she could hear them, thousands of voices blending into a single restless hum. Elvis slowed his step. Not many get to see it from this side first. She felt the heat of the stage lights bleeding through the fabric, could see faint dust motes dancing in the thin sliver of light near the floor. He paused, looked at her once, then at the curtain. "You wait here a second," he said, and just like that, he slipped through. The curtain swaying shut behind him. Cliffhanger. The crowd roared louder, sharper as if something had just happened. The curtain swallowed him, but the sound on the other side exploded. She stood frozen, every sense straining. The low rumble of the crowd had turned into a living roar. The bass from the monitors thumped faintly through the floor, a slow pulse in her legs. The backstage lights above her flickered harsh fluorescence, casting long, pale shadows on the cinder block walls. She noticed how different it felt here. No velvet seats, no stage glamour. Just cables coiled neatly on the floor, metal cases stacked against the wall. The faint smell of hairspray and coffee hanging in the air. Musicians brushed past, carrying instruments, their footsteps quick and sure. One man with a trumpet gave her a nod, as if to say, "You must be someone." She gripped the scarf tighter. She caught a glimpse through a narrow gap in the curtain, just a slice of stage bathed in white light. Beyond it, the dark ocean of the crowd. Somewhere out there, people were clapping in unison. A rolling wave that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Footsteps approached. It was Elvis's stage manager, a compact man with a clipboard tucked under one arm. He gave her a quick smile. "You doing all right?" She nodded, though her pulse was racing. "You picked a good night," he said, then disappeared down the hall. The energy shifted. The house lights dimmed. The noise outside grew to a fever pitch. Through the curtain came the sound of the announcer's voice, deep and booming over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen." Her stomach tightened. "Elvis Presley." The crowd erupted. The sound was physical, pushing against her chest, vibrating the walls. She leaned forward instinctively, trying to see through the gap. She caught him. Elvis stepped into the spotlight, dressed in white, with gold accents flashing under the lights. The audience surged to their feet. The band hit the first notes, the sound sharp and alive. Her eyes darted between the moving bodies on stage, guitarists swaying, backup singers clapping in rhythm, and the man in the center, who had just been a few feet from her moments ago. He didn't look in her direction. Not yet. She realized she was holding her breath. Cliffhanger, and then, halfway through the first song, he glanced toward the wings right where she was standing. The music swelled in, then his eyes locked on hers. From her place in the wings, she could see everything. The lights weren't just bright, they were blinding, casting sharp beams that caught every shimmer of the rhinestones on his suit. The heat rolled off the stage, mixing with the faint scent of hairspray and warm cables. Elvis was in full motion now, hips swaying, mic in hand, voice booming through the arena as CC Rider shook the rafters. The crowd was a single, living thing, shouting, surging toward the front. And yet, in the middle of it all, he glanced to his right. His gaze slid past the brass section, past the cluster of backup singers, and straight into the shadows. Where she stood, it wasn't a long look just enough to make her certain it was intentional. Then it happened. A quick nod. Before she could process it, a stagehand appeared at her elbow. "Come with me," he said, voice low but urgent over the music. Her knees felt weak, but she followed, stepping carefully around coiled cables and mic stands. The stage edge loomed ahead. The lights were blinding now, hot against her skin. She emerged into full view of the crowd. The roar hit her like a wall. Cameras flashed in the front rows. Thousands of faces were suddenly there, all at once, all looking. Elvis turned toward her without breaking stride. He reached for the scarf still in her hands. She offered it, almost. In disbelief, he took it, gave it a quick spin in his fingers, then draped it around her shoulders with a flourish, leaning in close so only she could hear. He said, "Now you've been to a show." It wasn't loud, but the words vibrated through her. The crowd erupted again, and she felt the vibration through the stage floor. A flashbulb went off just a few feet away, freezing the moment in white light. She could feel the drumbeat in her chest, the warmth of the scarf against her neck, and the reality of the moment finally breaking through. This wasn't a dream. She was standing on stage with Elvis Presley, in front of thousands. He gave her a quick wink before stepping back to the mic, launching into the next verse without missing a beat. The band swelled behind him, brass and guitar filling every corner. Of the arena, the stagehand gently touched her arm again, guiding her toward the wings. The lights faded as she stepped back into the shadows, her heartbeat still pounding to the rhythm of the music. From there, she watched him finish the song, the scarf now resting where he'd placed it hers to keep. Cliffhanger, she thought that was the gift. But a week later, something else arrived. She thought the scarf was the gift. She was wrong. The night outside the Mid-South Coliseum was quiet when she stepped back into it. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and reflecting the yellow glow of the street lamps. In her hands, she still clutched the scarf form, soft and heavy with meaning. Security saw her to the curb. The Cadillac was long gone. Behind the walls, the music roared on, but for her, the night was already over. She walked away in a daze, the scarf pressed to her chest like a shield against the cooling air. For days afterward, she replayed it in her mind. The moment the window rolled down, his voice, the ride, the stage. She told her family every detail, but even as they listened, she could see in their eyes it sounded too perfect to be true. A week later, the proof arrived. The package was small, plain, with no return address. She opened it carefully, hands trembling. Inside was a Polaroid her. On stage, Elvis's arm round her shoulders, scarf in place. The glare of the stage lights glowed. Faintly, in the corners of the frame, taped to the back, was a folded note. She peeled it free, unfolded it, and read, "To my friend, you'll always have a seat in the front row." Elvis as her breath caught. She read it again, slower, as if the words might change under her gaze. She brought it to her parents. This time there was no disbelief, only quiet smiles, and the kind of nod that says, "Now we understand." According to her family, she kept that photograph and note framed for the rest of her life. The scarf, carefully stored, came out only on special occasions when she'd tell the story. She never embellished it. She didn't have to. 5 minutes in a Cadillac, 2 minutes on a stage. That was all it took for a rainy night in Memphis to turn into the kind of memory you carry forever. And she always said the same thing at the end. Kindness finds you when you least expect it. Closing moral, in the middle of a schedule, a storm, and 1,000 other demands. Elvis Presley saw one person and made her feel like the only one. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes small acts of kindness can change a life. What's one moment of unexpected kindness you've never forgotten?